Welcome to Curious Lorenzo, a podcast where I research in real time topics that I'm curious about. So, I haven't recorded a podcast in a while. I have been super busy and very tired. I think the last podcast I recorded, I didn't even post because I feel like the quality was not that great. Like, the content was not that great. I was very self-conscious about it. But when I recorded it, I was in Spokane, Washington, doing basically doing a remote, doing my job, not remotely, like remotely these days makes it sound like you're away from your home office, which either way, I wasn't at home. I wasn't with my family. I was across the country doing my job in another city in a different state. And I was without my family, so I had a lot of time. So I thought I would record this podcast. Didn't end up being very good. But either way, the point is I have been I've been very busy. I haven't had a lot of time to kind of just be curious. I feel like one of the biggest sort of parts of my personality, the biggest pieces of me, if I was to just sort of reflect on it, would be my curiosity. I am curious about some of the most silly things. It might seem silly to a lot of different people, but that's why I started this podcast, was because I wanted to sort of just voice out some of these weird things that I'm just curious about and that I want to research and that I want to know about. But lately, I haven't really had that. Lately, I have been focusing on a career, on a job, on getting ahead in life, all this other stuff. And the reason for that is I don't want my children to have to worry or want or need these basic things like stable housing and stable food and, things like that. So I have been focusing basically all of my energy into a career and a job and advancing and all this other stuff. I've put to the side my curiosity. And right now I'm thinking like I need to get back into my curiosity. I need to get back into my creativity, and I need to spark that again. And if the job that I have is taking that away from me, then I need to reevaluate that situation. So for me, my creative outlet, obviously podcasting, I like doing it. It's honestly, if anybody listens, I'm really happy that they do, but it wouldn't affect me much if people didn't listen to it, because I just love the creative process of the podcast. But if you're listening, thank you. That's cool. There are so many more better podcasts out there that you could be listening to, and you chose this, so that's I'm flattered by that. The other creative outlet that I have is video and photography. I have always, since I can remember, loved taking pictures. Even if it was just like a little disposable camera. I don't know what the millimeters are, 35 millimeter. Yeah, 35 millimeter disposable Kodak camera. I would just love taking pictures. It makes me so happy to know that like I can snap a picture and it could come out, and it's not going to look exactly like what you saw, but you can kind of picture it. You could kind of imagine what this picture is going to look like, and there's a lot to it as far as, I mean, I'm not a professional photographer. I'm not trained or anything like that, but taking those pictures just brought me a lot of joy, and developing that film and the anticipation of, going to whatever it was, like Walgreens with my parents to get that film developed. And then I took that with me to adulthood. Today, of course, we have digital photography. I have my iPhone 11 Pro that I've had for a couple years now that takes fantastic pictures, even though it's a couple years old. And I love expressing myself in photography. And that's the only camera I have, really, is my iPhone. And I also have a OnePlus 8T, which is an Android phone. I like taking pictures on that too, but my iPhone is my primary. I have it with me all the time. It takes great pictures. It takes fantastic video. So that's another creative outlet for me. But recently, my work has kind of taken that spark away from me. And I've sort of reawakened it a little bit, just thinking I have my short weekend here. And Lindsay, my wife, she has a podcast with her brother called What's Up ABQ. They were on a hiatus for a long time, and they're sparking it back up. And I thought, you know what, like, that's really cool. She invited me to be involved in it a little bit. And then me and Lindsay have a podcast called Parenting versus Podcast that we just recorded an episode on. And it feels so good to be creative, to express yourself, and to have that curiosity that I'm sort of like forcing myself today to do this. My typical weekends involve me kind of just laying around, doing absolutely nothing, because I feel like I'm so burned out from the work week. And I know a lot of people get to that point. A lot of adults get to that point where they forget about their creativity. They forget about what brings them joy because they're caught up in this race for survival. For me, it's survival. I know a lot of people, maybe it's other motivations. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's power. Maybe you want to be rich or whatever it is. Status. For me, it's literally just survival. Like paying my debts, having stable housing, having stable food for my kids. That's where I'm at. But that got me thinking to where my curiosity came from and why I've been curious historically. I talk a lot about the things that have brought me curiosity in this podcast before, but I wanted to kind of go into it in depth here, and I actually had a chance to interview really briefly. It was kind of like on the fly. Lindsay, my wife, and her brother, my brother-in-law, Ryan. I wanted to know what made them curious as kids. So we were in a coffee shop, Slow Burn Coffee here in Albuquerque. Shout out to Slow Burn. And I'm going to play a recording. I'm going to transition this recording into that recording that I took earlier. So it's got a coffee shop ambience. There might be some music. There's clinking and clanging of coffee, the espresso machine and coffee cups and coffee mugs. And maybe, there's some just different sounds in this area. This was recorded in a coffee shop. But I wanted to know what sparked your curiosity as a kid. And I feel like I could take this even further with them later, but for now, this is good enough. And the reason I want to know this is I'm curious about them as individuals, and I also feel like it's important to get back to that curiosity as adults, because it's not a fun existence when your entire existence is just survival. And I know that I have a lot of privilege if you go down that road of like comparison with people across the globe. But that's the space that I've, I guess, put myself into. That's the space I'm in. And when you forget about just that curiosity, it just becomes drudgery and it's not super fun. So yeah, I'll I'll stop talking. I'll take a little break here, play a little bit of break music, and then I'll play that recording that I took earlier today. All right, let's go ahead and do that. Hello, welcome to Curious Lorenzo, a podcast where I research different topics that I'm curious about. Today I'm curious about why you're curious, and I actually have a couple of guests today. It's not just me talking your off. I have my wife, Lindsay Dominguez, and her brother, my brother-in-law, Ryan Freeman. So I'm just going to ask a question about what sparked your curiosity as a child. Because for me, I feel like children are the most curious. And as an adult, we sort of lose our curiosity and we get lost in the grind. And sometimes we have to be reminded about what we're curious about. So I just started thinking about this the other day, and I wanted to know what makes other people curious. So I'll start with Lindsay. So if you can think back, as a child, what did you get lost in? What was your curiosity, something that you could just think about for hours?
When I was younger, and I don't know, maybe my brother will remember this too, but our mom used to take us to the library on Mondays, every Monday. And I used to go through the different book sections. And I went through this phase where it was like everything about ancient Egypt. I literally went book for book, through the little kids library portion of ancient Egypt. So that was super cool. And those books were just a jumping off point for different segues into different things. I think at one point I was really interested in mummies, so I went that direction. And then I finally got done with the ancient Egypt section, and I went on to the country India, because everything about India is fascinating to me. And so it was okay, now I'm going to read about India. And then I started reading about Indian folklore and Indian art and Indian culture, and just kind of, I don't know, looking at those books sort of just gave me these tiny little segues into different smaller interests that I would sort of investigate, explore, and then move on. So
that's awesome. So that's the ancient Egypt thing is really cool. I can relate to that. For me, it was city-states and ancient worlds, just wondering what happens in those cities and how life happens without the technology we have. I had similar curiosities. Cool. Anything else? All right.
No, I mean, I've always liked kind of learning how other people live. When I was a kid also, my neighbors, a couple of houses down, had a big trunk in their garage, oh my gosh, what's the word? Those big trunks, the old ones.
Oh, like a Foot Locker?
Yeah, like a Foot Locker full of old Life magazines, dating back to the early whenever the magazines started, 1920s, I think. So we would sit there and we would just flip through these old magazines, in the summertime. We'd go sit in my friend's garage, we'd ride our bikes, and then when we got tired of that, we'd go flip through these old magazines, and it was always just interesting. And then that kind of graduated to National Geographic magazines and old ones, looking at those and kind of just seeing how other people live. That's always been really interesting to me.
Do you know what's really cool about those magazines? For me, it sounds kind of weird, but the ads to me were really cool. What were people buying back then? Those are really cool.
And how were they marketing it to everyone? Yeah, no, you can still go on YouTube and find old reels of ads from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're ridiculous. They're so fun to watch.
Yeah. Didn't you say you had a shortwave radio too as a kid?
Yeah, actually, my grandpa, my mom's dad, my grandpa, he was kind of a inquisitive mind. And he used to take me to this museum called OMSI in Oregon. It's the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. And that was super cool anyway. But at Christmas one year, he bought me a shortwave radio. So I'm a kid. This is 1993, maybe, 94. And so at night, because the sky is clearer, you can tune into more countries. The frequencies reach further. So at night when I'd be in bed, I'd be like laying in my bed looking up at the stars through my window, and I'd just be tuning into like different countries. I used to listen to the Shanghai Opera all the time. I used to pick up on like French Canadian radio stations, and then lots of Russian, which is interesting to listen to. But yeah, you could always hear different countries. You never knew what you were going to get. So
I think we take that for granted today in the age of the internet. Like, there was a period of time where you were not like connected to anywhere in the world how we are today, and like that's really cool. Like when we first started getting internet, I set up a Yahoo email account, but it was .co.uk. I thought it was so cool because I was on the UK version of Yahoo. Like, we're disconnected, but that's really awesome. Cool. Ryan, what sparked your curiosity as a child?
So I think it was mainly stories, to be honest, and Legos. Those two things. Like you're saying, getting lost in for hours, man. Like, I just like, Lindsay would have music on in the other room. It was usually like Ace of Base or the Beatles, and so I would sit there and I would just build Legos, for hours and hours and hours. And the other thing was like stories. So like, Lindsay mentioned that library we'd go to. I remember like, being down in the kids section, and eventually one day I got to a point where I felt like I had read everything down there that I wanted to read. And I was like, oh yeah, there's the rest of the library. So I started going up into like the adult section. I'm using air quotes. And then I remember one of the big reasons I got into to fantasy was because we'd have to line up in the library to go into the computer lab to learn how to type. And I'm short. I've always been short. And so the library bookshelf that I could see, like as I stood there, was fantasy. So I'd stare at these titles, every day for, 10 minutes or whatever. And so eventually I just started reading them because I was going to be there anyways. So
I found out something new about my brother-in-law today. So Ryan is an author. He writes fantasy books. I'll link his website, ryanpfreeman.com. But yeah, so do you have any specific stories in mind that you remember as a kid?
Yeah. So, and I still own it. It's this old yellow crumbly copy of Robin Hood that's like from like literally like World War II from like London. I don't know how it survived. I don't know how it got here, but my dad would always read it to me. I still have it. I read it every now and again, but that was a big one. And I gotta say, like, Scholastic book fairs as a kid in the 90s, that's like the best thing.
Yeah. I just remember like waiting, like as the teacher would come in with the box, and then they would call the names, and like you were so excited if they called your name to get the books that the order was in or whatever. That was really exciting. That's awesome. Cool. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about what made me curious. I remember one time standing with my dad outside, and there was a solar eclipse. And of course, you're not supposed to look directly at the sun or the solar eclipse because it could hurt your eyes. Yeah. So my dad made this little box. There's a name for it, but if you fold a box correctly and you poke a pinhole in the top of the box, what's projected on the bottom of the box is the solar eclipse. And I remember hanging out with my dad, and first of all, this little gadget I thought was really cool. But then me and my dad started talking about the sun and how it's a star, and then we started talking about the stars at night, and I was just kind of blown away at how far away stars were. And that's when I was first introduced to the idea of the speed of light, and the speed of like light isn't instantly seen, like how it travels at a certain speed. And that just like really started getting my head going, like, wow, that's really insane to me. Like this light gets to travel across the universe, across the galaxy to my eyes. That was just really fascinating to me.
I think it's really cool too that like if you look at the night sky and you look at the stars, like you could be seeing a star that's already burned out, but like you're still seeing it, and that kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, so that's really cool. All right, so little short episode today, but just try to be curious today. Bring back that childlike curiosity, Even though your grind can be stressful, you can get caught up in that. Take a minute to just be curious and remember what makes you tick, really. All right. Have a good one.